imagine what these negotiations were, what exactly the government has or is attempting to force this private company to do, and I'm sure it has something to do with the images that they send back, where they can land, because I'm sure the government doesn't want a private company rooting around the moon, which we know to be chock full of structures and anomalous activity. But up until now, all commercial companies have been limited to operations in Earth's orbit only, and it has been only governments that have sent missions to other worlds, including the moon. They still don't want the public to think that they're trying to keep people from going to the moon, because that would only create more suspicion. So them allowing this private company to go to the moon may just be the government attempting to show us that they have nothing to hide by continuing this monopoly on space. So it is. We'll first start from a quote by a man named Isaac Asimov, who is an American author and a professor of biochemistry at Boston University. He said, quote, "We cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon by rights ought not be there. The fact that it is there is one of the strokes of luck almost too good to accept. Small planets such as Earth, with weak gravitational fields, might well lack satellites. In general then, when a planet does have satellites, those satellites are much smaller than the planet itself. Therefore, even if the Earth has a satellite, there would be every reason to suspect that at best it would be a tiny world, perhaps 30 miles in diameter. But that is not so. Earth not only has a satellite, but it's a giant satellite, 2,160 miles in diameter. How is it then that tiny Earth has one? The moon is basically a freak of nature." According to Ken Johnson, the supervisor of the Data and Photo Control Department, during the 1969 Apollo moon mission, and after the lunar module crashed into the surface with a force that was equivalent to about a ton of TNT, it was said that the moon not only rang like a bell, but that it also, quote, "wobbled" in such a precise way that it was almost as though it had gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside of it. Dr. D.L. Anderson, professor of geophysics and the director of the seismological laboratories at the California Institute of Technology, is quoted as saying, "The moon is made inside out, and that its inner and outer compositions should be the other way around." Lon Hood from the University of Arizona said, quote, "We knew that the moon's core was small, but we didn't know it was this small. This really does add weight to the idea that the moon's origin is unique and unlike any other terrestrial body." Dr. Sean C. Sullivan from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology said, quote, "The lunar orbiter experiments had vastly improved knowledge of the moon's gravitational field and indicated the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow." Dr. Gordon MacDonald of NASA once said, quote, "It would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere." When looking at the moon, Dr. MacDonald surmised that the data must have been wrong, only to find that it wasn't. Farouk El-Baz of NASA says, quote, "If water vapor is coming from the moon's interior is this serious, it means that there is a drastic distinction between the different phases of the lunar interior, that the interior is quite different from what we have seen on the surface." Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, both who were high-respected Russian scientists who in 1970 asked this very simple question, quote, "Is the moon a creation of alien intelligence?" Dr. Harold Urey, who won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, once said, quote, "I am terribly puzzled by the rocks from the moon, and in particular, their titanium content." And for those of you who don't know, it is said that if the moon does contain a hollow, metallic inner structure, that it would likely be made of titanium, hence the strange high amounts of titanium that have been found in moon rocks. The famous cosmologist Carl Sagan once put it very simply and bluntly when he said, quote, "A natural satellite cannot be a hollow object." Erwin Shapiro of Harvard and the Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics says, quote, The best possible explanation for the moon is observable error. The moon doesn't exist. Our moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, and much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. So these are just a handful of the quotes coming from some of the most respected men on the planet, the smartest men, guys who know what they're talking about, people that have won Nobel Prizes. And everything that we have just read to you, it all follows one common pattern, in that the very existence of the moon, let alone its composition, is very hard to explain. So just to go over some of the things we've learned about our moon here. Above all, and to put it simply, the moon seems to be engineered. The lunar module experiments were the perfect example of that, when they set up the seismometers on the moon, which then picked up the moon ringing like a bell afterwards, gave us distinct data that something wasn't right under the surface. Another thing to note about our moon is that it has elements on its surface that it should not have. One of the most fundamental questions that have plagued scientists for years was how it was possible that the surface of the moon was so hard, and why does it contain minerals like titanium? Mysteriously, there have been lunar rocks, meaning rocks that were taken from the moon that have been found to contain processed metals, such as brass, mica, and the elements of uranium-236 and neptunium-237 that have never been found to occur naturally. Yet, there are traces of them on the moon. Uranium-236 is a radioactive nuclear waste, which is found in spent nuclear and reprocessed uranium. Neptunium-237 is a radioactive metallic element and a byproduct of nuclear reactors and the production of plutonium. The moon is also older than Earth, and is unlike any other satellite that we've ever discovered in the known universe. Researchers know that the moon is 4.6 billion years old, and that raises many questions. This means that the moon is older than the Earth by nearly 800,000 years. It also has an incredible orbit, and is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary, nearly perfect circular orbit, and it does not spin like a natural celestial body, nor does it have any characteristics with any other moons found in our solar system. Not only have they found titanium in the rocks, but these moon rocks contain 10 times more titanium than the, quote, titanium-rich rocks found on planet Earth. But many researchers have accounted for it and have simply said there's a perfect explanation. The moon has a hollow inner titanium core, and as the moon has been struck by millions, if not billions, of meteorites over the years, it has chipped away at this titanium inner core, which would perfectly account for the high levels found in the lunar rocks. Last but not least is the moon's precise position in regards to our planet. We have a moon that is in a nearly perfect position, and everything we've seen points to the possibility that the Earth's moon is not only artificial, but that it was in fact placed into its current orbit around our Earth. So I want you guys